other vulnerable communities who are already here. We need to take on the big insurance companies that make it harder to start a business and bankrupt us when we're sick. We have to bring back manufacturing, encourage our kids to go into the trades. I want to bring robust civic education and home economics back to our schools and teach kids to love our country while equipping them with the skills they need to be successful adults. It all comes down to this. We've got a lot of challenges, and we need someone with proven leadership at the helm. I brought Plymouth County out of a $1 million structural deficit. I oversaw the distribution of over $90 million in CARES Act funding. I spent my entire adult life fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. Now I want to fight for you on Beacon Hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra Wright. Our first question will go to you first, Sandra. What are the achievements, events, or experiences that have had the biggest impact on your life and defined who you are today?
Thank you, Pat, for that question. I think that there's a great many in what I've done throughout my life, great many experiences and achievements that I've done, from either working at the hospital for 18 years in the emergency room, working on the fire department for 15 years, just seeing the crises that we deal with every single day. People who are homeless, people who can't afford insurance these days. And then, of course, we have, the drug overdoses and the opiate and fentanyl crisis that we deal with every single day. There are so many things that I couldn't even begin to tell you what I would work on, and what I've also seen and been on the ground with and done. So I think that, just being and working every day with the people, over the last 30 years, that's what I've done. I've been in the community and I've worked hard for them. I've listened to them, and I understand what they're saying.
Okay, thank you, Sandra Wright. Dennis Gallagher.
So some of the experiences that I've had throughout my life, there have been quite a few. I think one of the biggest ones that has impacted my life is when I left the small town that I grew up in East Bridgewater and left for the United States Navy at the age of 17. I turned 18 a few weeks later. But leaving a small town like that, like Rainham and Bridgewater are, Bridgewater's a little bit bigger, but leaving a small town like that and heading to boot camp to meet people from all different parts of this country, different walks of life, different backgrounds, at the age of 17 has awakened me to be able to understand different people, different needs, and different concerns that they have. I take that experience in the United States Navy with me every day of my life, because it certainly was a very rewarding time in my life, and I met a lot of different people and was able to understand and understand different parts of the world, the different backgrounds of people. Achieving a bachelor's and master's degree at a time where growing up with 8 brothers and sisters was something that wasn't even talked about going to college in my house, in the house I grew up in. To be able to achieve that on my own without any assistance and paying for it on my own was something that I'm proud of. But most importantly is the public service that I have given to my community over the last 30 years as a member of the Bridgewater Finance Committee, a member of the Board of Selectmen, and 9 years as a town councilor. That has been probably the most rewarding experiences in my life. I've been able to help people get groceries, help people get oil for their furnace if they needed it, and I've been able to donate and give back to the community by helping other service organizations and many causes in my community. Public service has been really the biggest reward in my life. I hope I have the opportunity to continue my public service and serve you on Beacon Hill as a state representative.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Next question goes first to you, Dennis. What are the reasons why you decided to seek this particular position of state representative, and why now?
Well, Pat, I wanted to do a forum with you asking questions. That's why I decided to run. No, I think everything in life is timing. I think that, and I certainly do want to thank and respect the service that the outgoing state rep, Angelo D'Amelia, has given this district for 14 years. It's not easy. It's not easy to run for this. But when I decided that I was not going to run for town council in January, about a month before the announcement of this becoming open. So when it became open, I took a look at it. It has been in the back of my mind for quite some time if the opportunity was there. So I met with a few people over a couple of beers, and we talked about, what about my candidacy? What do you think about that? And I was encouraged tremendously to run, and I've been running ever since the middle of February. I can help our district. I have the track record to bring money, to bring programs that will benefit the residents, the taxpayers, the seniors, the veterans to this community. I can go to Beacon Hill, build coalitions, get things filed, get things heard through committees. That's one of the biggest hurdles. Everyone can file bills up on Beacon Hill, but you need to be able to get that to a hearing and have it go through the process and not die in committee. I have built coalitions up there already, and if I'm successful in this campaign, I will continue to do that. So I think Bridgewater and Rainham need infrastructure needs tremendously. I've heard it from a lot of residents walking around and knocking on doors about 138. Why is that taking so long to get repaired? Bridgewater has a couple bridges and a lot of roads improvements over there as well. I'm ready to hit the ground running by filing my suburban infrastructure bill so proper money comes to our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Same question, Sandra Wright.
What was the question again?
What are the reasons why you decided to seek this particular position of state representative, and why now?
So my whole life, as I said, 30 years I've been in public service. I've been on the ground, whether it's in the fire department, in the emergency room, I'm on the suicide coalition. So I've really seen a lot. I've seen, worked with people, I've worked with families, I've cried with them, I've laughed with them. I've been there for them, and not only am I there for them, but I fight for them. If there's ever any need that they ever had, whether it was back then the food stamps or to get health insurance, I guided them, I showed them where to go, how to get help, who to see. And I think it all goes back to, years ago when I had my first child. My first child was born very, very sick. We were given 24 hours for him to live. He lived 14 years. But along that way, I had to fight. I had to fight for every single thing that I needed for him or what he needed. So I know what it was like to fight for someone. I also, as I fought for him, and I spent most of my time in the New England Medical Center, I also talked to a great deal of many mothers dealing with the same thing. And, they just never felt that they had a voice, and nobody was ever transparent for them. They needed answers. They needed direction. They needed somebody to cry with. They needed somebody to talk to. And that was 25 years. So I think I've, put my feet in the ground, and I've really worked and gone out and worked with the people. I still do. I still work with the Suicide Coalition. When there's a suicide, I'm there for the families. I go out in the middle of the night. I, go out during the weekends. I go out all different times. Wherever there's a need, I'm there. I tell people my phone is on 24 hours a day. If you ever need me, call me. And I take great pride in doing what I did, and I would do it all over again.
Thank you, Sandra Wright. Next question goes to you first, Sandra. What has been your campaign strategy, and what have you learned while campaigning?
Again, I think campaigning has been, I think in everything in life, everything is a learning curve. Something that I really always had a desire to be and do without any self-gain. I'm not in this for self-gain. I'm here to fight and work for the people. I understand what their needs are. I understand what they're looking for. I can go to the Beacon Hill, and I can put in legislation. I can put in a great many deals of bills, and I know where they're coming from, and I know what the needs are of the people that are putting them in. I work well with both Democrats, Republican. I work along both sides. I have a history of that, especially Plymouth County Commissioner. We have a great deal of Democrats on our team, and so I think that, I'm a person who can listen. I don't really care what you are. All I care about, and that's the first thing I said when I became a Plymouth County Commissioner, is I don't care what your party is. We're here to work for the people. And that has always been my focus, always will be my focus. And I feel that, there's a great need. People need transparency. People need to be heard. And that's one of the things that they feel that they don't have is a voice.
Thank you, Sandra Wright. Same question, Dennis Gallagher.
So the strategy is to win. That's number one. So how do you win a campaign? And we looked at this, and you build a committee. You create a treasurer. You raise money. But more importantly, you get out there and meet the people. And you talk about what they're concerned about and listen to them. I have been knocking on doors in Rainham since the middle of May. And I have knocked and probably have talked to, I've knocked on thousands of doors in the town of Rainham. And I have talked to hundreds of people and have listened to them and have taken notes as to what they're concerned about. What can I do for them as a state representative? And we've talked, I've had some great conversations with people about their needs and concerns. So it's about listening to people as the strategy, and introduce myself, particularly in Rainham, because I've been involved in Bridgewater for a long time. People in Bridgewater know me pretty well, but not so much here in the town of Rainham. So I made it a point that I would focus and do a lot of my strategy focus to introduce myself to as many folks in Rainham as I can. And I'll continue to do that over the next 2 weeks, in addition to Bridgewater. But that has been my strategy, is to let people know who I am, what I'm about, what my background is, and what I think I can do for them as a state representative on Beacon Hill. And I only say that, particularly in the town of Rainham, the people have been very, very nice and very hospitable when I've knocked on their doors in the middle of July when I'm sweating and it's 4:30 in the afternoon. And many of them have offered me some cold water, and we sit down and we talk for a few minutes. I have enjoyed those conversations. I will continue to do that over the next 2 weeks. It looks like it's going to be 80 degrees for the next couple of months, I guess. But I've enjoyed the time that I've campaigned, and my strategy is to meet people and listen to their needs.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Next question. What do you see as the role of a state representative? And along with that, if there were a job description for what a state representative should be, what should it include?
Me?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm
Here
sorry,
we go.
Dennis, yes.
So the role of a state representative is pretty much what I just talked about, is listen to your constituents, advocate for your district, and go to Beacon Hill and file bills, build coalitions, and advocate for those needs and concerns of the people in your district. Whether it's an elderly person that's having a hard time filing for a will, whether it's someone that needs special legislation to, in the retirement world, there's a lot of legislation filed on behalf of public employees and things like that. Legislation that will help our veterans, legislation that will help our senior population. That's what a state legislature should do on Beacon Hill, is meet with the leaders of the communities that you're representing, ask them what their needs and concerns are, and advocate for those needs and concerns on Beacon Hill. And it doesn't matter whether I agree or disagree with that. It's up to, I am their representative. I should go to Beacon Hill and file that bill, whether I agree with that or not. Individual constituent concerns is very, very important. When I was on the town council, I had quarterly coffees down at the local coffee shop. If I'm fortunate enough to win state representative, I'll have those in both towns as well, to listen to the constituents, make myself available, be available 24/7, and listen to their needs. That's what public service is all about. It's about helping people, and being a state representative, I want to help people. I want to help my communities that I'm serving, and to do the right thing and file and advocate on their behalf. That's what I think a state legislature should do.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Sandra Wright.
Yeah, sometimes I laugh when, people ask me, what I'm going to do when I go be up there every day, because they're concerned that you're not sometimes in formal session or, the budget and stuff like that. And I said, well, yeah, I'll be up there as, need be. But my biggest point is that you don't forget your constituents. You're still out in the roads, you're out in your town, you're asking people, you're helping them. The biggest thing that concerns me is the health care. A lot of people don't have health care. A lot of people don't have the luxury, I guess, of it, as we might say. Even the Obamacare, they just can't get it. children who are, just not taken care of or fed, or and they're in great need of so many other things, our education. Even the schools, we need to get in there and find out, what they're teaching our kids, and what they're coming out and able to do after they go through 12 years of schooling. It's very poor in their education. Some of them are coming out not able to read or write. So I plan on being in my community, as I always have been, fighting for people to get coverage for insurance, people to able to get food, people to get whatever they might need to get along. I know that the rents are going up. People are now becoming homeless. Every time I get a text or something, someone's telling me that they're homeless because their rent just went up to $575 a week. How can that be, especially when it was just $1,200 a month, and now it's gone up to over $2,000? So what are we going to do about this? I think that this is a tremendous need for us to be able to stop gouging, stop putting people out on the street and letting illegals in. That's not what we are made of, or what we first started out as American citizens. So I will be on the ground every day, every week, to see and talk to people. I will probably I know I'll set up an office in Bridgewater and Rainham, and I will meet with all the town officials weekly.
Thank you, Sandra. Right. Next question. What are the particular strengths that you possess that would contribute the most to your effectiveness in the position of state representative? Sandra.
Well, again, I'm going to, go back as my strengths are listening and talking to people, being there, being the soundboard, being able to help them in whatever way I can. I know as a state rep, you have a great many areas that you can feed off of, look into, and get them help. There is no reason why somebody is going without being taken care of in our two towns because I have neglected them. That's not what I've ever done in the past. I will be there to, my strengths are, of course, visiting the people, listening to the people. I am also putting in, I have this device that I'm looking into that you can put around the air, which stops people from that are on drugs or alcohol, PTSD, and depression. I think that would take a lot of our efforts off of, repeat visits to the hospital, and would cure some of these diseases that we have. Mental illness is a huge issue in our community, and we have to start looking at it. When we close the mental hospitals, people don't have anywhere to go, and that's why, we're having the gun problems. We're having, kids that are committing suicide at 14 years old, even younger, 12 years old. And I think that, we really need to stop this and find ways to help them and get them help.
Thank you, Sandra. Right. Same question, Dennis Gallagher.
So my strengths and effectiveness. My strengths are my leadership abilities that I have demonstrated as a public official for the past 30 years. Balancing 9 budgets as chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee in the town of Bridgewater. Filing legislation to change zoning in our downtown area that we are going to see at our old Perkins Foundry land, which has nothing to do with the MBTA district. This is separate, but I filed the zoning change to change the zoning so the developer could put in his project, which will include housing and businesses. I filed that legislation. And I also, as a town council, worked with the town manager to create a 5-year capital plan, which the town never had during my tenure as a town council. That 5-year capital plan gives us a gauge as to some of the capital needs that the town is desperate for, but yet does not have the money for. It's just a plan that shows how much it's going to cost to do all the things we really need to bring our town up, bring the town of Bridgewater up to 100% of capital needs. Can't pay for everything in 1 year, but what you do is you take that plan, you capitalize it, and then you use some revenues to fund certain things that year. I helped develop that plan with the town manager and other members of the Budget and Finance Committee. The effectiveness that I have demonstrated as a leader is to get that capital plan passed, to get that capital plan funded, and to implement it so some of those projects are actually happening as we speak tonight. Can't afford everything all in 1 year, but it's a start. The zoning change that I put forward, we are going to see some construction real soon at that project. Effectiveness. Balancing 9 budgets in a row as chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee, that's effectiveness. So that's the strength and effectiveness in leadership that I have that I will bring to Beacon Hill.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Next question.
Can I rebut him on that?
Oh, no, your next 2 minutes you can. How would you assess the district? What do you think are the strengths of the district as a whole and of the towns individually, Bridgewater and Rainham?
Well, the strengths of both towns, although Bridgewater and Rainham are a little bit of a different community, the strengths in Rainham is your commercial base is certainly much larger than the town of Bridgewater's. You have Route 138 and 44, and that, I think, helps you be able to make budget decisions based on that additional revenue and not have to rely too much, although you have to at some point, on the taxpayers of the community. So I think the strength of Rainham is the commercial base that you have in comparison to Bridgewater that doesn't have the strong commercial base that we have. The Bridgewater doesn't have the commercial base that Rainham has. The strength that Bridgewater has, I think that Bridgewater State University is an absolute asset to our community. It's a beautiful campus. It's an open campus. It's not gated. You can walk through it. You can jog through it. You can take your dog through it. And it's a great setting that we have, and Bridgewater has a great partnership with the officials at Bridgewater State University. The challenges that I see that both communities face is that we're always facing funding for our school district. We were promised back in 1995 when we joined as a district that we would get full funding for transportation. We know we don't get that. That's a struggle that both communities have. In addition to our Chapter 90, which is highway money, I don't think either community gets their fair share of Chapter 90 money to help repair our roads and bridges. That's why I want to file my suburban infrastructure bill that will see to it that additional money is appropriated for smaller towns, maybe under 40,000 residents, to give them the needle they need or the push they need to help them with extra projects to build their infrastructure.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. And just to repeat that during your 2 minutes, you can either rebut something the other candidate has said or answer my question or both. So that same question goes to you, Sandra Wright.
Okay, so I disagree with him a little bit in what he has done over the years that he was in. The master plan does not work for Bridgewater. If he's listening to the constituents, he would clearly know that they don't want a lot of things that they're trying to build. Also, as a Plymouth County Commissioner, I've brought in hundreds of millions of dollars to Bridgewater. What did you do with the money? In fact, I had to keep chasing after the town manager to fill out the application to get the money for our town. And why wasn't you, as a town councilor, there to keep hounding him, telling him, why haven't we gotten our money that we're due from Plymouth County? So for you to sit there and say that, you know, all this infrastructure and stuff, and plus what makes me question when you say that is you're going to build all these apartments and we don't even have the water for it. How are we going to supply water for another 900 apartments in Bridgewater? Because you haven't done the infrastructure study. And I'm sorry, what was the question that I
What do you
wanted to-
consider to be the particular, or how would you assess the district? What do you think are the strengths of the district as a whole and of the towns individually, Bridgewater and
I
Rainham?
think the towns have a lot that they need to bring in. There's a lot of funding that they can get for different facilities and things that can go on. We're just not looking into them. We don't have a person who's taking that on their own to look for grants and other ways of bringing in money. I think that we need to find out, you know, what is our idea of what we want, and instead of just building like Mr. Gallagher is saying that we're going to do all this building, and yet we don't have the actual infrastructure. Why go way ahead and not have the infrastructure behind ready to go, like the water And, you know, we're going to bring in all these, you say the MBTA.
Thank you, Sandra. Next question goes to you first. Do you believe state government in general supports the cities and towns across the state to the extent that it should? What more should be or could be done to support our cities and towns?
First of all, I want the government to get out of my life. I don't want it in it. I think that, you know, some of the things that they do is fine. Some of the things that they don't look into depends on who the leader is up there at the house that tells you what you get and what you don't get. I think that we have to back off. We have to look at the audits that we should be doing, and I know that's on the ballot question. We need to, you know, go back, look at how much money we have. You know, my thoughts are, if they can spend billions of dollars for illegals, why are we paying taxes? I would like to see us have no taxes at all. I think that the State House is just spending a lot for things that we really don't need and just padding other people's pockets. I would like to see an audit, and I would like to see, you know, where the funding is going. And I think that there's a lot more as I'm up there. I'm sure that I will ask those questions. I will find out where our budget is and where we're at. And I will make sure that every single penny that is needed and come back into Bridgewater and Rainham, only if they have a plan of what would be good in these areas to support.
Thank you, Sandra Wright. Same question, Dennis Gallagher.
Sure. State government plays a very important role in both communities of Bridgewater and Rainham. When your town manager or your town administrator is developing the budget for the following fiscal year, it's very, very important to know and understand where the governor's coming from in the initial budget that's released in January, because local aid is very, very important to the local communities. Local aid is important because it helps and it probably alleviates additional taxes that are going to be required of the local citizens. But the school funding is very, very important to the local communities that comes from the state. The lottery aid that comes to other communities is very, very important that comes from the state. It's important to the way you develop and operate your budget. So the role of state government to the local communities is very, very important. And it's probably a small percentage of the budget compared to the property tax and local receipts that are generated through excise and other areas. But that's very, very important. So there also always needs to be a state partnership with state government and local officials. And through the Massachusetts Municipal Association, their link to the local communities through state government is very, very important. But getting back to the question a couple ago, I was referring to the capital plan, not the master plan, which are totally two different plans in the town of Bridgewater. The capital plan is a funding mechanism to address some of the capital needs in the town. And I will say the monies that Bridgewater has received from the Biden-Harris administration's ARPA and CARES Act fund has gone to very good use in the town of Bridgewater. We received several $1 million recently to help our new fire station that's going to open in a couple of years. We've received a lot of monies to help us with our water and sewer plant treatment upgrades. So that money has been used, and it's been requested, and it's been very, very appropriate. It's been approved and appropriated the right way.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Next question to you first, Dennis. Could you name at least one or two things you would propose changing about the way state government operates?
So one change is it's actually a question on the ballot. I think it's question 2. And do I support, it's question 1, I'm sorry. It's question 1 on the ballot. Do I support the auditor having the authority to audit the legislature? I support that. I think that would be a big change. I support that question simply because of my profession of what I do. I work full-time as a director of a retirement system, and we are at the beck and call of state regulators all the time. We're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars in employees' funds. We have a responsibility to make a payroll. We are audited all the time by the state government, so I'm used to it. I have to send financials to our regulatories every single month, and they review them to make sure that they're in line with our general ledger and expenditures were dispersed appropriately. So I'm used to that in my profession. So I don't understand what the big deal is about having an audit of the legislature. So I support that question. That would be a big change. The second change that I talked about is my suburban infrastructure bill. Would be a different way that a community could file for a certain amount of money to get a certain project done in their community. It would be a new way of not, in addition to Chapter 90 monies, as I said, which is highway funds that come to the town, this would be a new way of directing infrastructure money for roads, bridges, and sidewalks to the communities. So those are so I do support question 1, and I'd like to see my bond bill pass to help our communities with infrastructure.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Same question, Sandra Wright.
I guess one of the biggest concerns I have is with the government or the state when they give us money. I almost feel like this is money I already paid for. They're giving me back my own money, and then they're going to tax me on it once again. I'm concerned about how they give money out. As I went around as a Plymouth County Commissioner, giving money out from the CARES Act and the ARPA funds, we were entitled to get it, although I was not all for it because we got $90 million. Well, who's going to pay back this $90 million? And every town that I went out to and gave a check or presented a check to them, I always asked them, what are you going to do once all this money that flows in to your town here, what are you going to do when it ends? How are you going to support all of these things that you're supposedly doing and redoing? So you have to be very careful about that because it's money that they're giving us, but we already paid taxes on it, and guess what? We're going to pay taxes again on it. So how many times are they going to keep on taxing us on that? The other thing, as far as the fire station in Bridgewater, 3 weeks ago, didn't I just give you $5 million for the fire station as they were putting in the bill for that? And I think, we do need to look back in our own, just like our own household. I just don't imagine some of these, the way we spend. It's like running your own house. Would you spend money like the government spends it? No. So I think we have to make them accountable and be a little frugal about, how we spend our money.
Okay, thank you, Sandra Wright. Next question. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the state and facing your district?
Well, first off, the first thing I can think of is the illegals. I mean, we cannot support this. When you're talking, just recently, there was a gentleman who called and needed an apartment in Brockton, and he told us that he got $30,000 for an apartment for a year. When my friend just got evicted from his apartment because he had to now pay $575 a week, that's unheard of. We can't be sustainable if we keep on funding these illegals. So no, I don't think that we should give them anything at all. They have to come into this country the right way. I do not support anything as far as illegals. Our schools, they don't speak the language, so we're taking away from our own kids from being taught what needs to be taught because they have to take the time to translate everything for these kids. We just need to start focusing on our veterans. Why are my veterans homeless? I tried to open a veterans home years ago, just before COVID came in, and right now the veterans don't have anywhere to go, and they're not cared for. Our veteran hospitals and places are being shut down. There are no homes. In fact, I went before the selectmen or the town council in Bridgewater asking them about opening up a veterans home, and I was turned down. So there is no future there as far as Bridgewater goes. They don't want the veterans. They didn't want it in their backyard. But there's a lot of things that we have to start focusing in locally and start doing and taking care of our own first.
Thank you, Sandra. Right, same question, Dennis Gallagher.
First of all, Bridgewater takes care of its veterans, and it takes care of its veterans very, very nicely. And they have a huge support group in the town of Bridgewater. Second of all, the biggest challenge I think that's facing our district There are many challenges facing our district, but the biggest challenge, and every single person in this room is feeling that, and it's inflation. It's the cost of groceries. It's the cost of gas and other things, necessities that you need on your day-to-day life to live. Nobody has the silver bullet to solve inflation, but that's the biggest challenge that's facing the people of this district that I've heard about and have talked to them as I have knocked and walked the streets of Bridgewater and Rainham over these past 8 months. So taxes are also a big challenge to some of the residents and an impact on all residents in this community. I certainly don't want to see a couple that has lived in their house for 30, 40, or even 50 years have to be forced out of a house that they've had so many memories in because they can't afford to live there, because their taxes have increased so much. So there needs to be some relief for those that have stayed in their house for a long period of time or have a certain income level. So to give them a tax break so they are not forced out of their house and lose all those memories as they get older. So these are some of the biggest challenges that I think that are facing our district. Number one, it's inflation. Number two, it's taxes. And we just have to deal with that and try to help people the best we can in Bridgewater. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Next question. Do you see any way or ways that the state could eliminate waste and excessive spending without reducing services? Question goes first to Dennis.
So waste, fraud, and abuse is certainly something that, particularly in today's society, it's easy to discover and it's hard to hide. But it's about, is a program that the state has worthy or not? Is it helping people? There needs to be an evaluation process done. I think that part of the audit of the legislature could uncover some things that are done that could necessarily be done differently, not necessarily eliminate, but be done differently or eliminated. So I do think that, when you talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, we talked about the EBT card situation several years ago. There was no check and balance there. We talk about the exhaustive amount of time state government just had to put an effort into about the Steward health care crisis. Those are resources that the state didn't expect to have to, absorb because of a crisis that was brought out by real estate developers. So I'm not saying that's waste, but it's something that was unforeseen as far as what the state had to subject themselves to do. The other thing too is you look at the benefits, salaries of state employees. I don't think there's waste, fraud, or abuse there. I do think that some of the programs need to be evaluated from time to time, whether enhance them or a different way and direct them, and build coalitions perhaps with private sector people, private sector businesses, to maybe build collaboratives so the program could wean off total state funding and have better collaboratives.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Sandra Wright.
So, yeah, EBT cards are a joke. I mean, just every single month, it's not being watched. Every month they get more on their EBT cards, and so even people who are in prison, they don't use it, they still get it put on their cards. Migrants, we can't sustain that. Health care, there is no place right now for health care for people to go, especially with all the hospitals and what we just went through of them closing. Day surgery, people who are in great need of these surgical procedures. Constant revisits back to the emergency room, or for these people who are on drugs, fentanyl, they have repeated visits back and forth to the hospital, which costs us millions of dollars. So we have to get a grip on doing something for our mental health and for our drug addicts, alcohol, and depression, PTSD. There's a great many things that we have to look into to work on and make it more feasible for the state to get a grip on that and be able to afford it. I think the biggest thing, though, is the migrants. We can't possibly afford the $10,000 a day, I'm sorry, a month, that they get just to be here illegally, break our law. How do we like that? We don't like it. So I think that there's a lot of different things that there's fraud, waste, and we could do a whole lot better up at the State House as far as curbing some of these expenditures that we don't need. I think that, you know, we need to have, as representatives, I think that we need to go up there. We need to be strong. We can't be influenced by others around, no matter what party you are, but we have to have a voice. We have to be a voice for our constituents and knowing what they need and what we need to do to help them.
Thank you, Sandra. Right, next question goes to you first, Sandra. Would you vote to repeal the state's right to shelter law or amend it in any way or support it as is?
I think that there is a right to shelter only if you're a citizen. And, you know, sometimes we've had to, I know sometimes we've had to take moms into the hospital to stay the evening because they have an abusive person at home. So there are ways that we do need shelter for some of these people to get away from their abuser. I would not go along with any of that unless they were a citizen and they were placed in our facilities for whatever protection that they need. And we need a lot more of that too, because women, I remember being in the emergency room, come 5 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, we always had a female come into the emergency room. Why? Because that's when her husband came home and that's when she wanted to get out of the house, so she would come to the emergency room. That was her only safe haven. I think we need to do a lot more work on that. There's so many different issues that we can't go over them all in 1 hour here.
Thank you, Sandra. Right, same question, Dennis Gallagher.
So in my plan, as I mentioned in my opening, as I talked about, we need to amend the right to shelter law in this state. It does need to be amended, and that is one of my priorities when I do go to Beacon Hill. But let's not forget, these are human beings at the same time. And let's also not forget that the right to shelter law has been in place in Massachusetts for over 40 years. It's always been there. There has always been funds appropriated every single year to help migrants that wanted to flee there where they were currently living. But the intent of it in the beginning was to help people that have lost their homes due to catastrophes, whether it be earthquakes, you know, floods and things of that nature. We were a right to shelter state. But the problem that has become, and I think we all would agree, is that there's just so much money now that's being spent on this. And hotels are packed with migrants. The last round of money that was appropriated, at least it has a path to get them off the assistance that's provided to them and gives them a time frame to get out into our society and earn a living and get their own housing. So there's a time frame with that. It also provided a priority for homeless veterans in the latest round of monies that was approved for this. So I thought that was a good thing. But we certainly need to take a look at that right to shelter law in this state, and it needs to be amended. I believe there's a state representative on the Cape. His name escapes me at the moment, but I believe he's going to be filing some amendments on that, and I'm interested to see what they are and perhaps work with him if I'm successful, because it does need to be addressed. So yes, I think we need to amend it. And
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Next question. If elected, what will be your plans for your first few months as you transition into the position?
so, as I mentioned in my opening, what I have understood is when we're sworn in January, you have, I think it's that month, to file all the legislation you want to get done. You got 30 days, and you have to have it filed. Now, you can always amend things and add things in as the process goes forward. But as I talked about, my goal in the first 30 days is to file my suburban infrastructure bill that will help our communities with infrastructure needs that are so sorely needed. I hope to work with colleagues and develop an a right to shelter amendments to that law. And I also want to work with, look at how we can help save taxes on our seniors and our elderly population, as I talked about. Housing is a big issue. I don't want to see a couple that has been living in their house for 30, 40, 50 years have to go out when they have all these memories in their home somewhere they really don't want to go. They want to try to stay in their house. We need to help them, and I think I can file legislation to relieve them with some additional taxes and help with our homeless veterans and develop a plan to provide more housing for our veterans. And not just housing, it's in mental illness with our veterans today. Suicide is a major, major issue amongst our veterans today. We all know that. So we need to have better programs that'll help them. I think the act that was just, the HERO Act that just was passed has a lot of good things in there for veterans, and we probably do need to expand on that. So those are the priorities that I would look for, filing those bills and work on those things if I'm fortunate enough to be elected in November, and I'll start that in January.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Same question, Sandra Wright.
Well, I think that he's right in many ways, but the thing is we don't have a plan as far as the elderly and taking them out of their house, and we have no plan to transition them. And even when they do transition into another place, it's just as expensive as it was while living in their own house. So you're really not doing them big favors unless we come up with some solution where it can be affordable housing for our elderly people. Even with the, so many economic problems with the inflation, their food, their heat. Many people, as a firefighter, went into many homes in the elderly. They didn't have heat. They didn't have medication. There's so many things that they're in need of that you just can't whip them out of their house and put them somewhere else and expect them to survive, because they're not going to. Not only that, but then the mental and the depression and everything that they go into. We do have a lot of veterans who are on suicide watch. I know. I go out and teach suicide recognition to fire departments, teachers, businesses, and so many other places. It is a big problem, not only among the veterans, but also among the young children, who are also the latchkey kids that have nobody at home to watch them, oversee them. Sometimes, we have the lunches and now breakfast in schools for the kids that don't get any of that. So I think that we really need to do better in so many ways. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the, nitty gritty and just start forming a way for all these children, adults, veterans, everybody, and get the services. And we really need somebody to oversee all of that to get them the services that they need.
Thank you, Sandra Wright. As state representative, you will have to make many decisions. What is your decision-making process? And in particular, when faced with a difficult or a controversial decision, how do you make that decision? I've always been the kind of person who, no matter what decisions we have to make, there's always an answer. We might not both like it, but I think that we can come to some kind of conclusion or agreement of what we both feel and how we can fix this issue that we might have. It doesn't help to fight against somebody and not be a good listener. It doesn't help to walk away mad. We really need to start, focusing in on, and asking questions like, why do you feel that way? How do you think that we should go? How can I help you? What are the means of, what is this going to help the outcome of it? And just sit and come to an agreement, as we used to do in years ago. Nowadays, there isn't any of that. It's either my way or the highway, and that's not any way to focus in on, what the needs are and what needs to be done and how it needs to be fixed. Thank you, Sandra Wright. Same question, Dennis Gallagher.
So my decision-making process evolves pretty much you evaluate, you do your research, and you listen. And that's been the decision-making process that I have used, being a selectman and a councilman for many years in the town of Bridgewater. We have had many issues come before us. Most recently, before I got off the board a couple years ago, was the retail marijuana issue that we had struggled with as a town for several years. And I was opposed of retail marijuana in the community of Bridgewater. And I evaluated that based on how I looked at our community with a large senior population, with a large college population, and say, well, is this really fit our community? And I'd said, I don't think it really fits our community. So I didn't support retail marijuana in the town of Bridgewater. It passed in, it failed in 2016, but it was brought back to the voters through citizens petition, and we voted on it again. It kept coming back like a bad penny, the issue. But eventually it passed in the town of Bridgewater, and we implemented it. I have no desire to change the law. It is what it is, and we will deal with it. But it's the decision-making process on a tough thing, because that really did divide the town of Bridgewater at that time, because it was a very close vote in 2016, and it was also a very close vote when it was brought in through citizens petition or a special ballot to vote on that. Like 50-50, 52-48, it's very close. So when you have tough issues like that, you need to evaluate, do your research, and listen. And that's been the three-point process that I have always used to make decisions, particularly tough decisions.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. I could go on asking questions for another hour, but we said we'd keep you here for an hour. So we're going to move to the closing statements. And by our lottery drawing, Sandra, doesn't time fly when you're having fun? Sandra Wright, your closing, please.
Thank you so much. There is a vast difference between myself and my opponent. I have a lifetime of serving the public. I've worked with the federal, state, and local levels to pass policy and procedures that have directly helped the people I represent. I have the experience with large-scale budgets, federal funding, and through it all have reached across the aisle to deliver for my constituents. Every role I've had, I've brought in honesty, integrity, and dedication, and believe we need those qualities on Beacon Hill. The truth is, the governor and the legislature don't care about us past the election day. They respectfully neglect our communities and have passed policies that have outright hurt us. It's harder to make a living now thanks to the governor and the legislature. Dennis Gallagher has proven and aligned himself with both. I have always been a voice for the constituents and believe that Beacon Hill needs to listen to us when we say our needs matter. I'll fight inflation, lower your taxes, and put more money back in your pocket. I'll support our small businesses sector, improve the education of our children, and bring much needed transparency and accountability to the State House. Most of all, I promise to be your voice. Countless people I've met on the campaign trail have told me they feel forgotten and left behind. I promise you this, I will not forget you. I hear your needs, your concerns, and your hopes. I humbly ask you to send me to Beacon Hill to fight for you. Please vote right choice on November 5th. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Sandra Wright. Closing statement, Dennis Gallagher.
I want to again thank Pat Riley and Ray Camp for hosting and putting on this forum. And I want to thank all those who attended tonight, my supporters who came here, and those watching at home, and those who will view this at a later time. I am running for state representative because I have the leadership experience, the track record of getting results for both our communities, and I will go to Beacon Hill with a plan of goals and objectives and be ready on day one. For nearly 9 months, I have been working to earn your vote. We have knocked on several thousand doors, talked with hundreds of voters, and talked about issues of concerns that matter to them. I would like to thank those who answered their door and to those who I spoke with while they were doing yard work or getting home from running errands, even during those hot summer months offering me a cold water. But there's still 14 days left, and I will continue to work hard to earn every vote. If I am successful, I will file a suburban infrastructure bill, make sure our regional school districts get adequate funding that it needs in both classroom level and transportation. I will build coalitions with my colleagues to bring tax relief to seniors and housing for our veterans. I'll work to reform the right to shelter law. I am proud of the support that I have received so far during this campaign. Endorsements from the Mass Teachers Association, Mass Nurses Association, Massachusetts AFL-CIO, and others that know that I will be a voice of reason when it comes to workers' rights, fair wages, and other benefits. I'm also proud to have the endorsements of 7 of the 9 current town councilors in the town of Bridgewater, many former town councilors, and the current chairman of the Ridgewater-Rainham School Committee. I hope that through my public service, leadership, and getting things done, that I have earned your vote. And I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th or sooner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis Gallagher. Thank you to our candidates, Dennis Gallagher and Sandra Wright, for participating. Thank all of you for joining us, whether here in the studio or watching from your homes. Please remember to cast your vote on or before Election Day on Tuesday, November 5th. In closing, we want to take a moment to thank State Representative Angelo D'Amelia for his dedicated service over the years as our state representative and wish him the very best. Thank you and good night.